Ivy League Potential provides world-class guidance, real skills, and coaching to help students through the college admissions process and get into the college of their dreams. Just a little bit about me. I am a former Harvard admissions interviewer and Harvard graduate, and I have been doing this full-time for 10 years, helping students get into top colleges, and have expertise in essay writing as well as student research projects. And I'm currently writing a book on leadership for teenagers. We've helped students get into top universities such as Harvard, Stanford, Brown, Cornell, University of Chicago, MIT, Berkeley. So we have quite a bit of experience working with high achieving students. As an example, I wanted to share a success story we had with a young woman named Diana, who is now studying at Stanford. Her guidance counselor at a top Illinois public school told her that she has no chance of getting into Stanford, which was her dream school. Her ACT score was 29, but she had a really strong GPA, and she was an award-winning horseback rider and artist. She came to us at the end of junior year and worked with us all summer on her application. And she was accepted to Stanford in the early action round. So this is an example of why you should not listen to naysayers and always believe in yourself and take the time to work with someone who's going to know you in detail and know your talents and know how to highlight and showcase who you are to colleges. So what's the value of a top college? Besides a world-class education, universities are often known for their alumni network and high-paying jobs. A lot of recruiters from Fortune 500 companies come to top universities in order to recruit students to join their company. There's also opportunities for unique internships, and of course, the possibility of making lifelong friends or even finding your life partner. As an example, in February 2019, at Harvard, there was a possibility for students to engage in 2 different networking events. One was a Goldman Sachs engineering coffee chat, and the second was a presentation with Morgan Stanley. So meeting with recruiters from top companies is one of the great advantages of going to a top college. Acceptance rates, as you can tell, are pretty low at some of the top universities. And the reason for that is because there's just so many students applying for a limited number of seats. There's 36,000 high schools in the United States. And if the valedictorians of all these high schools applied to all these universities, there just wouldn't be enough room. Generally, we say that around 80% or more of the applications are from students who are well qualified to attend the university, but there's just not enough seats. So that's why the acceptance rates are so low. And they seem to keep getting harder each year because more and more students apply with the click of a button on the internet. What we tell students is that you should reach for the stars. So do your best and don't worry about the results, but work hard and strive to be the best you can be. There was a study of around 700 millionaires, and they found that the average GPA was 2.9. So just because you go to a top university does not guarantee any kind of success financially or otherwise. But it's still good to use this time in high school to develop your skills and do the best you can. So often students ask us, what's the best university I can get into? And the answer is, it really depends. What we're looking for is a good fit. So you can say, what's the best song in the world? Well, everyone has different taste, and it depends on who you are and what you're looking for and what would be a place where you can thrive. So when you strive for whether it's Ivy League universities or other top colleges, whether you get in or not doesn't so much matter because you have grown and learned so much in that process. The students who work with us, we find that they often get into a top college, even if they do not get into an Ivy League university. And because they've done some really special things, they often win scholarships, anywhere from $20,000 to $320,000 we've seen. And they will also generally be admitted to honors colleges at public universities if they've done a really good job during high school. So our advice again is reach for the stars and do your best. So if you look at the future job outlook, a study of 1,500 top executives showed that robots will replace 38% of jobs in the next 15 years. What that means is that creative and critical thinking will be highly valued, as will emotional intelligence. That's from John Andrews, head of technology at PwC. So creative and critical thinking and emotional intelligence. Because if you did not have these qualities, then robots could do your job potentially. This is why universities use a process of evaluating applications. It's called holistic evaluations. So William Fitzsimmons, the dean of Harvard, said that students' intellectual imagination, strength of character, and their ability to exercise good judgment, these are all critical factors in the admissions process. And for those of us who are always looking for formulas, it's good to be reminded with the holistic evaluations that there is no formula. Richard Shaw, Dean of Stanford, reminds us. So what does that mean in terms of top college admissions? What that means is that in around 15 minutes or so, the admissions officer reading your application will be trying to put together a puzzle of who you are. There are, of course, numbers that they will be looking at, such as your GPA and your standardized test scores, such as the ACT or SAT scores. But a lot of what they will be looking at is more qualitative instead of quantitative. They will be looking at things like leadership, creativity, personal qualities, a lot of soft skills that are found in other parts of your application, such as essays, resumes, recommendation letters, and so forth. And one way to look at this whole process is to remember that it's about head, heart, and hands. I love this quote from St. Francis of Assisi. He who works with his hand is a laborer. He who works with his hands and his head is a craftsman. He who works with his hand and his head and his heart is an artist. So let's look at step one. Step one is that you should set high academic goals for yourself. That means strive for the highest possible GPA, study hard for the SAT and ACT, do well on any AP or IB exams that you'll be taking, and think strategically about super scoring and score choice when you submit your test scores. Generally speaking, a SAT score of 1450 or above is considered competitive for Ivy League universities, and an ACT score of 34 or above is considered competitive. A lot of schools, of course, as you know, have gone test optional. And so everything is in flux during times of uncertainty. And what that means is that if you do not have a test score to submit, then the other parts of your application will carry more weight. So I'm going to do a deep dive into the way that Harvard admits students. And they give students ratings on a whole variety of different areas. And one of the ratings they give students is an academic rating. So as you can tell from this slide, the top level is a student who must be a potential major academic contributor with summa potential and near perfect scores and grades. It also helps if the high schooler has national or international level recognition in academic competitions. Then level 2 rating for the student is a student who has mid 700s on the SAT or higher than a 33 on the ACT, and so on and so forth. Generally, level 4, which is an ACT score of 26 to 29, is considered a bare minimum that students need to be successful at top universities. So the higher a student is rated academically, the higher their chances of admissions. What this means is that when you are selecting high school classes, you should think about what top schools are looking for and also continue to learn study skills so that you can be as effective as possible in learning a lot of material in a short amount of time. And if you do these things carefully, like for example, if you don't have too many AP classes in your schedule so that you're feeling overwhelmed, then you can actually do a lot in terms of your college admissions. You can really strengthen your application because you'll have more time for doing extracurriculars and special projects that will help you stand out. Of course, you do want to have strong grades and test scores, but you can also be more efficient at studying and also make sure you don't overload yourself with AP classes that may be unnecessary. Also remember that tutoring is effective. So colleges report either that they use a cutoff test in the admissions process or the small increase in test scores could have a significant impact. So if you have the time and money, private tutoring could well be worth the cost. This is a story of a student who was admitted to a BSMD program. He applied directly to these early medical school admissions programs, and he worked with one of our tutors and raised his ACT score from 33 to 35. His extracurricular activities were quite average, but he was admitted to several BAMD programs and received full ride scholarships at 2 universities after working with us. So the test scores really can make quite an impact in the admissions process. And it's good to remember, even though it is a holistic process, that the test scores and grades can carry a lot of weight. So it's worth putting your time and money in that process as long as it's balanced and you're not missing other parts of the college application process. So step 2 is to find your academic focus. Remember that colleges are building a class. So if you think about it as an orchestra, you have many different instruments and you want the best players playing those instruments so that you have a beautiful piece of music. And when you have students who are very strong in various academics and passionate about certain areas and subjects, you can have very lively discussions on college campuses. So the most important thing is that you do go deep and master a certain academic area. So that's your academic focus. And hopefully students would spend 3 to 4 summers working pretty intensively in the area that they have chosen. One of the ways that colleges know that a student has mastered an area is if the student has won any awards. Of course, international or national competitions are quite highly valued, much more than local or school level competitions. But all awards are good, and the more awards there are on a student's resume, the better for the admissions process. Now, if you do not have the opportunity to enter a competition, or if you enter but you do not win, another way to stand out is to do research or to do a special project. And that could mean that you study on your own or that you work with a university professor. A lot of labs are closed due to COVID-19 at the moment, but that doesn't mean that all research has stopped. So at the end of this webinar, I will be sharing with you a special opportunity to work one-on-one with university professors on research projects virtually. This Regeneron Science Talent Search is one of the most elite science competitions for high school students. When the winners are announced in January, many Ivy League universities check their database and flag applications from the top 300 student scholars. So let's say you applied to Harvard and you were one of the finalists and it was announced in January, then your application would be flagged and you would have a much higher chance of admission to Harvard, for example. We worked with 2 students. One student came to us the summer of junior year, and we encouraged him to do a special project and also to enter the Regeneron Science Talent Search, which he did. It was there was not a lot of time, of course, but he received an honorable mention, and he's now at UC Berkeley. Another student, he had done some research on toxic waste in Korea, and that was in a regular laboratory, but he did not want to continue his project. So we encouraged him to continue and publish his project. And what we found is that he made it to one of the top 300 winners. His research was published in the American Chemical Society Journal, and he's now at Stanford. So step 3 is about self-development. I love this quote from Adida. All of you are creative in one fashion or another. Each one of you is a genius at your service when you discover what your service is. You must discover your genius. So many of you have heard that universities love students who demonstrate leadership, and that is true. Leadership is something that requires a lot of self-development. It requires emotional intelligence. And especially in service, when you're doing community service, but you take a leadership role in a project and then you reflect on it, it becomes service learning. So you're actually learning something from the service that you do. This photo is of a school. One of the students that we worked with, she started an orphanage at the age of 15. And this is a photograph of young girls. So it's really impressive what students could do at this age. Assume no limits. And stay inspired and continue to develop your leadership skills. Some of the resources that we recommend are the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens. That's an excellent book. And then studying and implementing positive psychology practices. UC Berkeley has an excellent class on the science of happiness, where students learn how to remain balanced and happy in their lives. And that comes in handy not only in any service projects that the student is engaged in, but also in creating a balanced life that is so important during high school, because the college admissions process can be unnecessarily stressful. So we definitely encourage students. And when our counselors work with students, they actually start off every meeting and end every meeting with a positive psychology exercise. So that's an integral part of how we work with students. So when students have engaged in self-development, then they will probably get a really high rating on their personal qualities. So again, from Harvard, these are some of the qualities that they look for in students: humor, sensitivity, grit, leadership, integrity, helpfulness, courage, kindness, and many other qualities. And again, these are shown through letters of recommendation, and then the work that students do that are described in their resume and essays and interviews. One of the most common questions we get is, how many extracurricular activities should I do? And that's a really good question, because we see a lot of students who are doing too much. They're not getting enough sleep, and their lives are stressful. But that's not necessary. And those students don't always come out strong in the college applications process. And what happens there is that they're just spread too thin. So I love this quote from Howard Thurman: "Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do it. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive." So that's the key. When you're exploring extracurricular activities, we usually recommend students start in 9th grade and see what helps them come alive. What are they excited about? And then commit to a few select activities for the next 4 years. That's more important than doing 10 different activities just to build your resume or to feel like you're very busy. And that doesn't allow you to go deep into any particular extracurricular. So this is very important, and that's how you should choose the extracurriculars, and also how many. You should choose it based on the balance that you feel in your life, whether you have that energy, you're excited about the activities you're doing. And that requires that you have to learn to say no. Cal Newport has a couple laws that are really important for students. The law of underscheduling. So when you create a schedule, also block out times that are just free time and use that time to explore different activities or areas of interest, whether it's your academic focus or extracurriculars. And then the law of focus, which is to master one serious interest instead of wasting time on unrelated activities. And what you'll find is, when you're focused, you will be more likely to be inspired by the creative muse, because you're in a state of health and relaxation. There will be more time to listen to that inner voice that comes to you, to be inspired with new ideas, and to engage in what psychologists call the flow state, where creative ideas are just bursting forth. We also recommend that students learn to develop creativity from world-renowned experts who have studied the lives of great geniuses. Students can study the lives of these great geniuses themselves make connections between different disciplines, and think outside the box. So one of our colleagues, Michael Gelb, has written a book, How to Think Like Leonardo da Vinci. And his podcast is part of our online class. And we recommend that to students because it is important to stay inspired by studying the lives of great geniuses, artists, scientists, and so forth. Extracurricular rating. So that's something else that the top universities give students. At Harvard, this is the 4 levels. So number 1 is possible national level achievement or professional experience. Number 2 is leader within school or local community, student body president, captain of the debate team, newspaper editor, concert master, or the leader of multiple additional clubs. So again, the higher your rating in each area, the higher your chances of admission. And then finally, step 4, which is to showcase your strengths. And this comes during senior year when students are completing their applications to send to colleges. Usually the first applications are due either in October or November for the early round. Now, writing essays is something that is really important. And the more universities you apply to, the more essays you'll have to write. So this is an example of a student who had to write 25 essays. He actually had to write 12 original essays, and then he had variations of those essays. So the first essay he wrote was 150 words, and then he had to shorten it to 75 words. The second essay he wrote was 650 words, and then he had 2 shorter versions of that same essay. So it's a bit of a recycling and juggling act that we teach students how to do so that they are showcasing all aspects of their personality and all their strengths. We use the head, heart, and hands approach because that's what colleges are looking for in essays. The dean of Harvard, he likes to say that when he reads an essay, he wants to know, is this person going to be a good roommate? So that's one of the main things you want to show in your personal statement, for example. But you also want to show your intellectual vitality. You also want to show how you've contributed to your community. And here's the few examples of essay questions from Stanford that they've been asking students for years. As you can see, the questions revolve around extracurricular activities, writing a letter to a future roommate, ideas or experiences that make the student excited about learning, and something that is meaningful. And each college will have their own set of essay questions. So you have to recycle creatively. The resume is something else that's very important for high achieving students to submit. The resume is not required, but many high achieving students do submit one. So if you submit one, you'll be providing the college with a lot of information about yourself that is very impressive for them to read. Your 4 years of hard work are on paper in a very thorough and thoughtful manner. If you don't do that, then you have 10 lines on the Common App to showcase 4 years of hard work, which doesn't seem fair. So we definitely recommend submitting a resume. Also, we recommend that students submit supplemental material. So if you have any talents in music or art, or you've done research, you can submit a supplement to liberal arts colleges. And some schools, specialty schools, will actually require you to submit a portfolio or come for an audition or submit a video if you're an athlete. So supplemental material is very important because let's just take an example. At Harvard, about 20% of music supplements are considered exceptional and they're flagged. So students with flagged applications have a 61% chance of admission. So that's a huge jump from 4% or 5%. And generally speaking, if you're pretty good at something, there's no harm in submitting a supplement. This is an example of a success story we had with a young woman named Jennifer. She was an award-winning pianist, and mostly she had straight A's, but she also had a few C's on her transcript. With our help, she was admitted to Northwestern University, where she's studying music and physics. So her music talents were quite important in her application process. Recommendation letters are also extremely important in the college admissions process. What they're looking for is, will the student shake things up on campus or blindly follow the lead of others? So teacher recommendation letters and sometimes an extra recommendation letter from a mentor or someone in the community can give the admissions officers a better idea of who this person is. And again, there's a rating with recommendation letters. So it's based on how the teacher describes the student. So for example, if they say this is the best of my career or one of the best in many years, the student is likely to earn a 1. And if the applicant is merely one of the best or the best this year, they're more likely to score a 2. A balanced college list is very important, making sure you have enough safety, target, and reach schools. These days, we recommend that you apply to 10 to 15 universities because it is so competitive, and we want you to have as many admissions acceptance letters as possible. Now, we help students with all kinds of colleges, not just Ivy League universities, liberal arts, public and private universities, BSMD programs, engineering colleges, business programs, et cetera, et cetera. So often a college will have specialty schools that the student applies to, and we have helped students with all of these different types of schools. But a balanced college list is really important because a lot of students don't have enough safety schools on their list, we noticed. And demonstrated interest is how you show a university that you are serious about going to their college. So demonstrated interest means visiting a university. If it's not possible to do that during the pandemic, then virtual visits are important because many universities track this in their database, and you get little brownie points if you have demonstrated interest. But there's many ways to do this. In the past, it used to be more of a game because these demonstrated interest showed the university how serious the student would be for entering if they were given a letter of admission. And it affected this university's yield rate, which affected their ranking on ranking lists such as US News and World Report. And some of the rankings have changed their algorithms, so they do not take that into consideration anymore, but some still do. So it is still important to demonstrate interest in the university. Interviews, again, if you're offered the opportunity, take it. At Harvard, interviews are not required, but those who do not interview are rarely admitted. These days, social media profiles, it's important to make sure you have clean social media profiles because university admissions officers may look at your social media profile to verify something, and if there's something troubling they find on it, then they might think twice about whether or not to admit you. So we review students' profiles for them. It's part of how we help them tweak every little thing in the admissions process. So as we have gone over so much, you can see that there's many different types of ratings. And then at the end, there's an overall rating for students. And those students who have the strongest ratings, of course, highest ratings have the highest chance of admissions. Now, every university does it a bit differently. They have different voting systems and committees. But generally, you can be sure that a university will be looking at a student's application from a holistic point of view, and then using some rating system to decide who to admit and who not to admit. We haven't gone over legacies and recruited athletes and so forth, but if there's any questions at the end of the session about this, you can feel free to ask about that. I just wanted to share the story of John at Brown University. He had straight A's and a perfect ACT and SAT score, but he did not have a lot of extracurricular activities or leadership. And he came to us the summer after 11th grade. So we had to really dig deep into John's past activities and find how we could highlight his creative and critical thinking, which was quite outstanding. He was an excellent thinker. And he wrote some outstanding essays, and now he's studying computer science at Brown. So just because you don't have everything that a college may be looking for doesn't mean that you don't have a shot at getting into a good college. I also wanted to just highlight that when it's time to evaluate acceptance letters and financial aid, you can take some steps to increase your chances of admission if you were waitlisted or deferred. And also, I wanted to remind people that many universities have excellent financial aid packages. At Harvard, many students pay less than they would at a state public university because of their generous endowment and general financial aid department. So if your family income is anywhere from $65,000 to $150,000, then your family would pay anywhere from 0 to 10% of their income for tuition. And it is also possible to negotiate financial aid come April when you're making that decision. So don't give up hope. There are net price calculators that universities have on their websites to help you determine how much it would cost to attend, but it's also possible you could get a scholarship, a merit scholarship, or a need-based scholarship, and you just don't know until the end. So it's better to keep your options open and then make that decision in the spring of your senior year when you actually get the letter from a university. So we've gone over a lot. And one thing to remember is that the average student to guidance counselor ratio in the US is 481 to 1. So counselors don't have a lot of time to give students the the attention that they need, the individual attention. And even at private schools where the ratio is smaller, counselors are often juggling multiple responsibilities and they don't have the expertise on top college admissions. So that's why you have two options, either working with a professional such as our company, so make the process simple and strategic, or try to figure it out on your own, which can be quite complicated and confusing. We have a 90% personal college counseling success rate, and we start working with students as early as 8th grade so that there's no missed opportunities. And as mentioned before, in addition to getting into a top college and increasing your chances of admission, you can save between $20,000 to $320,000 in college tuition if you win a scholarship. And we've seen many students win a lot of scholarships over the years. We also have an online class, which includes more than 65 videos, podcasts, sample resumes and tip sheets, and also more than 20 Q&A sessions per year. And that's completely self-paced and online. So if you want to do it yourself approach, that's another option. The online class also includes interviews with top college admissions experts, um, including Mike Williams, author of Getting Things Done for Teens, Carol Kristen, author of What Color is Your Parachute for Teens, and so forth. So here's a unique program that I was telling you about earlier in our webinar. We have a research mentorship program where students can work one-on-one with university professors and scholars from top colleges, such as MIT, Harvard, Yale, Columbia, Oxford, and more. These students, some students will publish their research, write reports, and win awards. Of course, that's not guaranteed. It depends on what project you're doing and how hard you work, and what the possibility is for doing publication or entering competition. But there's a high chance a student could get a good letter of recommendation if they are hardworking and have a strong work ethic. This program is 100% online, and it's usually 8 weeks or more that the student works with a professor or scholar. So there's some really interesting projects that students have done. Most of them are in STEM, but there's also projects, in finance, law, psychology. But the popular ones are often computer science, engineering, biology, and so forth. So given the fact that it's hard to go into a lab during the pandemic, especially, this is an excellent opportunity. There was a student who worked with a professor and analyzed x-rays and then wrote up a report about that. So it's an excellent opportunity for students to learn about something in a lot of detail at the level of a university research project. So it's quite a unique opportunity. Even most summer research programs, even pre-COVID, had programs where you work together in a lab as a group. But doing a one-on-one project under the guidance of a university professor is quite a rare opportunity. So if you're interested in that, please sign up for a free consultation. We also have a BSMD prep program, and the student application is reviewed. Mock admissions interviews are conducted by physicians who have served on medical school admissions committees. So that's, again, a very unique program that we have for students who want to go into the medical field. And if you don't know what a BSMD program is, it's a direct entry into medical school from high school. Some of the programs are 6 or 7 years in length total, so that you save 1 or 2 years. And that's also not just your time, but tuition as well. So some of these can be really valuable for students who are 100% sure they want to go into medicine. And finally, we have a special leadership academy. So some students benefit from working with a mentor over a period of 15 weeks, where they study the lives of Nobel Peace Prize winners, and then they start their own nonprofit or found a club or organize a community service project. So we help students develop leadership skills and put them into practice. And some students really benefit from this extra support. So we hope that you enjoyed this webinar and will sign up for a free consultation. We would love to talk with you and get to know you and what questions you have. So now I'm going to open it up for Q&A. And let's see what questions we have. Here's a question from Pauline. What do you think the minimum should be when it comes to extracurriculars? So again, that depends. If you're, if you're so um, busy that you don't have time for too many extracurriculars because, for example, maybe it takes a lot of time to do your homework and grades are number one, of course, then even if you just do one activity, but you go and do a deep dive, that's really, really valuable because a deep focus and academic area is one of the most important things for top college admissions. And if you feel like you have more time after that deep dive and that kind of special project that you're working on, then you can, continue to add extracurriculars, maybe two or three, or maybe more. But again, I would say that the guidepost in this area is how balanced and creative and happy the student is, because we want students to shine and be excited about what they're doing. And if they're too overwhelmed, then that's just not going to happen. And it's not going to come through in the admissions process either. Question from Shreya. How exact do we have to be with the word limit on essays? It is important to be exact with the word limit. So that's why, for example, when we have students work with us, we have professional proofreaders read the final version of the essay to make sure it's within the word limit and that there's no typos, grammatical or spelling errors. That is important. Let's see, what other questions? Question from Ritu, what do BSMD programs look for in their essays, extracurriculars, and academics? So yes, they look for all the things that you would normally look for if you were applying, or universities would normally look for top colleges like Ivy Leagues. They look for all of that, but in particular, they are looking for students who can show that they would have good bedside manner as a physician. So that is important. And that means that they're looking for students who are compassionate, who can show compassion. They look for students who have shadowed physicians. And if you're not able to go into a hospital because of COVID, there are virtual shadowing opportunities these days that we can tell you about. And then they want students who do research. BSMD programs, your application will be strengthened if you have done research. And of course, especially if you have published the research or won an award. And also if you've done some service work with patient contact. So if you've volunteered at a nursing home or a hospital, but you've actually had patient contact and you have an understanding of the medical profession and how to work with people. Again, it's a little trickier because of COVID. So whatever you can do virtually or in person would be excellent. You have to get a little creative, of course, because of COVID. Let's see, question. There's a lot of questions about the mentorship program. So yes, that is a very unique opportunity that you won't find. It's not readily available, and it's something we worked really hard to provide to our clients. So if you're interested in the mentorship program, please set up a free consultation and we can tell you more about that. Here's a question. For a junior with weak extracurriculars and an uncertain career path, what would you most recommend? Yeah, a lot of students have not chosen their career. The academic focus, that's often something the student wants to study in college, but it doesn't have to be. So I would say you should just, and if you're a junior, that means you probably have about 7 months before your application is due. So you should do something special in the time that you do have. I think that's really important because if you don't use this time to do a special project, it'll be really hard to stand out from the crowd when the applications are being read. So you just have to buckle down and focus in on something and do a special project, whether it's research or an internship or something where you do a deep dive. Because if you're not sure about your career, just study anything that you're actually interested in, and that should be fine. You know, when you're applying to college, you're obviously going to be answering those questions. What do you want to study in college? But once you get to college, no one's going to hold you or force you to, study something that you said you would. They know that most students change their mind many times. Let's see what else. Given the COVID situation, how do you visit colleges? So there are opportunities to visit colleges. Most colleges these days have online tours. So make sure you register with your name. The student who's going to be applying, their name should be registered in the system so they can get brownie points for the demonstrated interest. But yeah, just visit the college website and see what they offer. That's what you want to do, is visit the college website. So there are some other websites that that provide virtual tours, but you won't get the brownie points because you won't be in the college system. Okay. If a student stays consistent in their extracurriculars but does not achieve a leadership position until their senior year, would this still look good to admissions? Yeah, I think senior year is fine. Better if it's junior year. Most students by junior year do some kind of leadership activity, but senior year is not too late. And you can also think about the current times. So, like the spring and the summer, if you're a junior, the spring and the summer right now are important times that you can jumpstart your leadership activities so that you don't start in August, for example, because you want to be able to write about that in your essays also. So, like we said, step 4 was showcasing everything. So you might have done a lot, but if you don't showcase it properly, you won't get the credit for it. So you want to make sure that you have enough time to write about it as well. If you're a top athlete and straight A's, how does that position you if you don't have many other extracurricular activities? So again, this depends on how strong you are with your athletic skills. If you're being recruited, then and you're successful in that whole process, then your application could get flagged and you would have a much higher chance of admission than other students. If you're a top athlete but you're not being recruited, then it's a little trickier, and I would recommend that you do some other extracurriculars as well. Is it possible to get into a top college without perfect grades? Absolutely. A lot of students have smatterings of B's. As I mentioned, the student who got into Northwestern, she even had a few C's in her transcript. So absolutely it's possible. Because it is a holistic process, they're looking for a lot more than just test scores and grades. And so on the good side, you don't have to have those perfect grades or test scores. They have to be pretty good if you're thinking about an Ivy League in general, unless you are part of a special category, like a recruited athlete or a legacy student or so forth. Okay. Here's a good question. Do colleges prefer specializing in a certain subject or being well-rounded? So if you had to choose between the two, like if you only have so much time and you have to decide whether you should specialize in something, I would say yes, do a deep dive in your area of academic focus and specialize. But if you have more time and it won't throw you off balance and you have time to do a couple other activities, 1 or 2 more activities, I would do that. And then I would make sure that, again, you do a deep dive in those other activities that you're doing. Because what you don't want to do is what they call jack of all trades, master of none. So there's a lot of students who just dabble here and there, like an hour in this club, an hour in that club. but they don't really get deep into anything. And I would say that that's detrimental to the college admissions process. Let's see, here's another question. Do Ivy League colleges prefer SAT or ACT? It doesn't matter. Either test is fine. And the tests have been changing over the last few years as well, so they're very similar in a lot of ways. So generally, what we recommend is students take both tests, see which one they do better at. Some students do significantly better at one test versus another, and then you can study for that one. What is your opinion about applying early decision to a specific college in terms of putting all your eggs in one basket versus applying to many colleges? So I would say early decision is something you should only do if you're sure 100% you want to go to that college, because it is binding, and you won't get to negotiate financial aid either. So I would say only do that if you're really 100% sure. It's a little bit trickier now with COVID to visit a college. Usually you would never apply early decision unless you visited the college in person. So if that's still a possibility where you can visit a college, again, safety is number one. But if it is possible, like if it's a college that's nearby your home or something, and you can wear a mask and do an outdoor tour, that kind of thing, that's a very important part of the process for early decision. I wouldn't just randomly apply early decision. Let's see, what other questions do we have? Would I be at a disadvantage compared to other applicants if I did not submit a test score? So that's a very good question. I would say right now everything is so much in flux because of COVID that it's hard to answer that. Generally speaking, the students, many students have not been able to take the SAT or ACT. So that's why many schools have basically eliminated that requirement, but that could change in the fall. We don't know. But in terms, I wouldn't say you're at a disadvantage, but I would say, just keep your eyes open. If you're able to take the test, SAT or ACT, take it and see how you do. And if you don't do well, you do not have to submit the score, of course. If you do well, it can help you. So I would say, keep your eyes open and don't give up on the testing entirely. But if you're not able to do it, that's okay, because it is COVID time at the moment, and a lot of universities are understanding how difficult it has been for students. Some students have been rescheduled 4 or 5 times, and they still haven't been able to take the test. So that's completely fine. Colleges are going to have a lot of leeway in this area for a little while now. So thank you so much for attending this webinar. I've enjoyed all your questions. I hope you learned a lot, and I look forward to speaking with you, many of you. If you could sign up for a free consultation, then I would love to chat with you further and answer any other questions you might have. Thank you very much, Grace, for organizing this webinar, and I look forward to staying in touch with everyone. Thank you.